Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
At the sight of the crowds, Jesus' heart was moved with pity for them because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." Then he summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to drive them out and to cure every disease and every illness. The names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon called Peter, and his brother Andrew; James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John; Philip and Bartholomew; Thomas and Matthew the tax collector; James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus; Simon from Cana, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Jesus sent out these 12 after instructing them thus: "Do not go into pagan territory or enter a Samaritan town. Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, make this proclamation: the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, drive out demons. Without cost you have received, and without cost you are to give." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Brothers and sisters, in today's second reading, St. Paul makes a bold statement. God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Not after we repented, not after we got our lives together, not after we became holy, while we were still sinners. Those words may be so familiar that we can easily miss how shocking they really are. Because we live in a world that loves a redemption story. When someone suffers unjustly, we rally around them. When tragedy strikes, we open our hearts. When someone is victimized, we want to help. And rightly so. But there is another kind of suffering that we often struggle to face. The suffering of someone who has made a mess of their own life. The addict who relapsed again. The spouse whose choices shattered a marriage. The person whose bad decisions finally caught up with them. The prisoner, the outcast, the sinner. Too often our response tends to be, well, they got what they deserved. Mercy becomes harder when we believe someone is responsible for their own wounds. Yet the gospel turns that way of thinking upside down. Because Jesus did not die only for the innocent. He died for the people who wandered. He died for people who failed, for those who rebelled. He died for us. Beneath many a saint's story is this truth: God loved me before I even learned to love him back. That's the heart of the gospel, and that is exactly what we hear today. Matthew tells us, at the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Notice what Jesus sees. He does not begin with judgment. He sees exhaustion. He sees confusion. He sees people carrying burdens. He sees people searching for direction. He sees sheep without a shepherd. His heart is moved with compassion. Then Jesus does something remarkable. He sends out his 12 best friends, not to condemn, not to sort people into categories of worthy and unworthy. He sends them to gather the lost sheep. The mission of the church has never been to find perfect people. It has been to share the mercy of God to imperfect people. That mission did not end with the disciples. Christ continues to send shepherds into his flock. Today, he sends priests. Recently, the church has been reflecting on the remarkable journey of our Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV. Because before he was called to the chair of St. Peter, Pope Leo answered the same call that the apostles heard. Go. He left the familiarity and the comforts of home and spent years serving the people of Peru as a missionary priest. A different century, a different continent, but the same gospel mission. 2,000 years after Jesus sent the 12 into the towns and villages of Galilee, Christ still says, go. And men still answer. Some are sent across oceans and continents. Some are sent to remote villages. Some to bustling cities. And some are sent to parishes just like ours. The geography changes, the language changes, the culture changes, but the mission remains the same, to proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, to seek the lost sheep, to heal wounds, to bring the mercy of Christ to those who need it most. Homilies and parish programs are important aspects of parish life, but most do not remember our priest because of that. They remember it because of a personal encounter. A hospital room, a funeral home, a nursing home, a bad decision that leads to a difficult confession, the diagnosis that changed everything, the unexpected loss, a moment when we felt lost, afraid, ashamed, and overwhelmed. These are also the moments when a priest shows up, sometimes with answers, often without them. Always bringing the assurance that Christ has not abandoned his people. One of the great gifts of a good shepherd is that he meets his sheep where they are, not where they should be, not where they wish they were, not where others think they ought to be, where they actually are. Being Catholic for any amount of time, there is probably a priest whose face comes to mind. When he presided at your wedding, when he baptized a child or grandchild, he listened patiently as you poured out a burden you had carried for years. When he came to the hospital, when the future seemed uncertain, when he sat beside you after the death of a loved one, when he simply listened when no one else seemed to understand. Years later, the words may have faded, but you remember that someone walked with you through that valley. You remember that you were not alone. You remember that in that moment, someone brought the compassion of Christ into your life. Not because the priest was perfect, but because Christ was working through him. That connection deepens because a priest is more than a companion on the journey. He is ordained for sacred responsibilities entrusted to him by Christ himself. Think about the moments that stand at the very heart of priestly ministry. At the confessional, through the ministry of the priest, Christ speaks the words of absolution and lifts that burden of sin. At this altar, through the consecrated hands and voice of the priest, Christ takes ordinary bread and wine and transforms them into his body and blood. Again and again throughout our lives, we encounter priests in ordinary moments and extraordinary moments. At weddings and funerals, hospital rooms and parish halls, during times of celebration and times of sorrow. And each encounter deepens the relationship that ultimately leads us back to those sacred moments when Christ meets us in the sacraments. The priest who sits beside a hospital bed is the same priest who stands at the altar. The priest who listens to our struggles is the same priest who extends God's forgiveness in confession. The pastoral presence and the sacramental mystery are never separated. Together they reveal the heart of the Good Shepherd who knows his sheep, walks with his sheep, feeds his sheep. Every act of authentic priestly ministry is meant to reveal the same truth that St. Paul proclaims today. The priest at that bedside, the priest in a confession, the priest at a funeral, the priest bringing communion to the homebound and standing at this altar. All are reminders that Christ still comes looking for his people. And perhaps that's why these moments remain so vivid in our memories, because they reveal something essential about God. God doesn't wait for us to have everything figured out. He does not stand at a distance until we become worthy of his attention. He's there in the hospital room, the nursing home, the confessional, the graveside. He meets us in our feasts, in our fear, our grief, our failures, our uncertainty. He meets us where we are. That is what Jesus was doing when he looked upon the crowds with compassion. That's what he entrusted to the 12. It is what he continues to do through the priests he sends into his church. The initiative always belongs to God. Long before we earned it, he loved us. Long before we began searching for him, he's already searching for us. Long before we call out to him, he's already moving toward us. Long before we turn to find our way back, he's already on the road looking for us.